I never believed in ghost stories or supernatural things, but what happened to me completely changed my view on these matters. My name doesn't matter, but you can call me Mike. I'm 34 years old and live in Michigan. This happened in 2017, on a night I'll never forget. I work in an accounting office, and as usual, was leaving work late. It was a Friday night, around 10 p.m. The office was already empty. I was the only one there because I had a lot of work and didn't want to leave it unfinished. After I finally finished, I decided to hit the road to go home, a journey of about 30 minutes. I was driving along the M23, a road that passes through a rural area with few houses and almost no lighting. The night was especially dark, and it was freezing. I turned on the radio and set the heater to maximum, trying to stay awake. Everything was normal until about 15 minutes later. I saw a car stopped on the shoulder with the hazard lights on. I slowed down and, as I passed the car, I noticed someone inside. The person was motionless, slumped over the steering wheel. My first reaction was to stop and help, but something inside me said to keep driving. You know that feeling when something is wrong? Yeah, that's what I felt. I kept driving, but that car wouldn't leave my mind, especially the person inside. The way they were sitting worried me. So, I decided to call the police and report what I saw. They thanked me for the call and said they would send a patrol car to check it out. I finally got home. My apartment is in an old building in downtown Michigan. Nothing special, but it's comfortable. I climbed the stairs to the second floor and went inside. As soon as I closed the door, I felt something strange, like someone had been there in my absence. Something was off, but I was too tired to think about it. I threw my jacket on the couch and went straight to the kitchen to prepare something to eat. While the food was heating up, I went to the living room and turned on the TV. Sitting on the couch, I started to relax, but that strange feeling wouldn't go away. After eating, I decided it was time to sleep. I went to the bedroom, changed, and collapsed into bed. I woke up in the middle of the night to a noise. It sounded like something had fallen in the living room. My first thought was that the neighbor's cat had invaded the apartment again. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and went to check. When I got to the living room, I froze. In the middle of the room, lying on the floor, was a man. It wasn't possible. The guy was dressed in normal clothes, but they were dirty and torn. He was lying face down and not moving. My heart started to race. I didn't know what to do. I approached slowly and illuminated his face with the flashlight. It was the same man I had seen in the car on the side of the road. Panic overtook me. How had he gotten here? Why was he in my apartment? I ran back to the bedroom and locked the door. I grabbed my phone and called the police. I tried to explain the situation, but I was so nervous that I could barely speak. Within a few minutes, I heard sirens. The police arrived quickly. They came in, examined the body, and asked me a bunch of questions. I told them everything I knew, from the moment I saw the car on the road to finding the guy in my living room. They searched the apartment, but didn't find anything that explained how he had gotten in. The officers asked me to come to the station the next day to give a statement. While they took the body away, I sat on the couch, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. At the station, they asked me more questions and said they would investigate. But honestly, I didn't expect them to find anything. I went back home, but couldn't feel safe there. Every noise, every shadow kept me on edge. The following nights were hell. I had to change my habits. I started leaving the lights on and locking all the doors and windows, even though it didn't make much sense. Even so, I couldn't sleep well. I decided I needed to get out of that apartment. I told a friend everything, and he let me stay at his place for a while. Even away from the apartment, the feeling of insecurity wouldn't go away. I kept having nightmares about the man I found in the living room. In one of the dreams, he would get up from the floor and come towards me. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. I returned to the apartment a few weeks later to pack my things and find a new place to live. While packing, I found something strange. Behind one of the pieces of furniture, there was a hole in the wall that led to the building's hallway. Apparently, someone had broken in through the hole to enter my apartment. The police came back to investigate, but didn't find any clues about who might have done it. The case was filed as an unsolved mystery. I never found out who that man was or why he ended up in my living room. All I know is that night changed my life forever. Hi everyone, my name is Carlos. I'm 37 years old, married to Laura, and we have 2 children, Mariana, 10 years old, and Lucas, 6 years old. Our life has always been quite peaceful. We live in a small town where everyone knows each other. But what I'm about to tell you happened about a year ago, and it completely changed our perception of safety and normalcy. We've always been a family of simple habits. Laura and I work in a local office, and our kids go to the neighborhood school. On weekends, we like to have barbecues in the backyard, watch movies, and play with our dog, Max. Our house is modest but cozy, and we have a small front porch where I usually have my morning coffee while reading the newspaper. It all started one night. We had just put the kids to bed, and Laura and I were watching a movie in the living room. It was one of those action movies she loves, but I was more interested in relaxing and enjoying her company. Suddenly, we heard a strange noise coming from the porch. It sounded like someone was scratching the wooden door. I got up, a little annoyed, thinking it was Max trying to get in. I went to the door and opened it, but Max was lying on the living room rug, raising his head with a confused expression. I looked outside and saw nothing unusual. The wind was blowing gently, swaying the porch curtain. I went back to the couch, trying to forget the noise, but something inside me was restless. That night, I slept poorly. I had strange dreams, dreaming of a silhouette that looked like a man. But he didn't seem normal. He was standing in front of our house. I woke up several times, sweating and with my heart racing. The next day, I told Laura about the dreams, but she laughed and said it was just the action movie messing with my head. I decided to let it go. Saturday night, we decided to have a barbecue. We invited some friends, and the kids were excited, running around the yard and playing with Max. The night was pleasant, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. After our friends left, we cleaned up the mess and put the kids to bed. Later, while Laura was taking a shower, I went out to the porch to take one last look at the starry sky before going to bed. That's when I saw something that terrified me. In the corner of the porch, there was a dark stain on the floor. It looked like blood. I was paralyzed for a moment, trying to understand what I was seeing. It hadn't been there hours before. I touched the stain with my fingertips, and my hand came back red. It was blood. I called Laura, and she came running, worried. I showed her the stain, and her face turned pale. We tried to clean it, but the blood wouldn't come off. We decided to call the police. Not wanting to alarm the children, we left them sleeping while we waited on the porch. When the police arrived, they inspected the area and asked some questions. They said they would investigate and advised us to lock all doors and windows securely. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed, listening to every little noise in the house. In the morning, Laura and I were exhausted. The children noticed we were different, but we tried not to show our concern. During breakfast, Max started barking at the porch door. It was an aggressive bark, as if he was trying to scare something away. I got up slowly, feeling a knot in my stomach. When I opened the door, my God, there he was. A man, or rather, the body of a man, lying on our porch. He was covered in blood, with wide open, lifeless eyes. Laura screamed, and I quickly closed the door, pushing the children into the room and telling them not to come out. I called the police again, and they arrived within minutes. The officers cordoned off the area and started investigating. What disturbed me the most was that they couldn't identify the man. He had no documents, and no one in town seemed to know him. The following days were a blur of fear and paranoia. The police came and went, asking questions, collecting evidence, but without answers. The whole town was in shock. Things like this don't happen in small places like ours. Every noise, every shadow seemed threatening. The children were scared, and Laura and I didn't know how to comfort them. Max remained agitated, always barking at the porch. I even thought about selling the house and moving, but Laura said we couldn't run away. We had to face it and protect our family. A week later, the police informed us that the case was being closed due to lack of evidence. They couldn't find out who the man was or how he had died. We were devastated. How could we continue living there, knowing something so horrible had happened? That same night, Laura and I decided to sleep in the living room to keep an eye on the porch. The children slept in our bedroom, and Max lay beside us, vigilant. Around 3 a.m, I heard a sound that seemed like a whisper. I looked at Laura, who was awake, and saw the panic in her eyes. The whisper grew louder, and soon I realized it was coming from the porch. I got up slowly, trying not to make any noise, and grabbed a knife from the kitchen. I opened the living room door slowly, and what I saw left me speechless. There was a dark figure standing on the porch, looking directly at me, just like in my dream. It had no face, just a shadow with glowing eyes. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. The figure moved slowly towards me, and I felt an indescribable terror. Max started growling, and Laura grabbed the kids and ran to the car. I backed away, still holding the knife, but the figure kept coming closer. I slammed the door shut and ran to the car where Laura and the kids were waiting. We sped off and drove aimlessly around the town until we found a hotel where we spent the rest of the night. The next day, we returned home, still scared. The figure had disappeared, but the feeling of fear persisted. We decided to call a priest to bless the house, hoping to ward off whatever was haunting us. He came, prayed, and sprinkled holy water in all the rooms. Things seemed to return to normal for a while, but the feeling of insecurity never completely left us. Life went on, but always with caution. We installed security cameras and reinforced locks on the doors and windows. Max was never the same, always alert and distrustful. What scares me the most is that we never found out the truth about what happened. Who was that man? Why was he on our porch? And that dark figure, what did it want from us? These questions still haunt me, and I'm afraid we will never have answers. Thank you for reading this far. Until the next story.